Hello and welcome to Current Wave. I'm your host, Ayla Wayman, and in this podcast, we meander through our shared delusions and stumble into ethereal shit talking as we dive into the waves of the human experience. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy the ride. Hello, welcome to episode 7. This is going to be a solo episode, and I'm excited to share it with you. So it's really funny. I recorded this episode like 2 days after I arrived in Colorado. I arrived here on Christmas, and I think this was on like the 27th or 28th of that month. And I really tapped into an energetic right away. And I hope that this energetic is going to be really helpful for others, because I think that there is just sort of this very clear universal theme within this. And I'm talking a lot about a relationship. And it's so funny because everything I'm saying is exactly true. And yet I hadn't even had any conversations with this person yet. I was just like tapping into the truth that I already knew about the dynamic, and I think a premonition of that relationship coming to a close. And it did come to a close and really shifted gears in a way that I both clearly expected, because I'm speaking directly to it in this episode, and in ways that I didn't expect. But what I speak about in this, of just a habit of choosing just enough, is definitely true. And yeah, it's just funny, like almost 2 months later, to listen back to this recording. This one's super raw and vulnerable. I become emotional at a few points, and that's really the intention with Current Wave in general. Like, this idea was never meant to be sort of this clean, clear, buckled up thing. This was supposed to be shared delusions and ethereal shit talking of being a human on earth and the wild ride that it is, and having conversations with myself, with you, with my guests, and having it just be really real. So often I get the inspiration for solo episodes at random. So the quality of my solo episodes is always terrible, because they always happen when I'm like in a flow state and I tap into something and I realize that, and so I hit record. In this particular case, I am sick, so I'm coughing and sniffling. I did edit those out a bit, but you will hear some of them. So I'm sick, and I'm climbing up the backside of Needle Rock, which is a rock that I am living near right now in Colorado. And so like the audio quality is terrible. I like don't know if I'm holding my phone or if it's in my pocket. So I apologize for that. And yet the message is there, and that's all I really care about, is sharing this message, because I think it's really helpful and important for others. And I just want to share my thoughts and have a conversation. And these are just universal themes, and navigating our own karma, our own blocks, the decisions that keep us looping, and the quantum leaps when we're ready to jump out of the loop, the quantum leap when we're ready to jump out of the loop into something new. And to me, that is just such a beautiful growth path and such a beautiful trajectory and journey. and we get to spiral upward and have a lot of different versions of revisiting our same themes, our life themes, through different lenses, different angles, different points of life. And each time, my hope is always that we get to reach a new level of understanding and depth within ourselves, and that slowly and surely our internal and external start to mirror each other more and more beautifully as we come into our inherent worth and wholeness and remembering of our path and accepting that path and claiming that path and living that path. So this is always the theme that I talk about, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. There are a bunch of episodes coming, solo episodes, guest episodes, lots in the year ahead, and I'm really excited to find my rhythm of this work amongst all of the other things I am doing. So thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with a friend, with an online space, any way that resonates with you. And wishing you a beautiful day.
Here I am, back in the spiritual boot camp that is Colorado, coming face to face with two really big teachers. One of those being my mother and family dynamics. I have Pluto and Scorpio in my 4th house. So there is some deep work to do with my family of origin in this life. And yeah, it's been such a spiritual path and journey as a result, spending bigger portions of time in my mother's home and working with that. And then also being in a really small place and meeting a man who has been just like such a cornerstone to my growth edge. In a lot of ways, because he is unwielding to my will. And he feels like such a embodiment and metaphorical, an embodiment of a metaphor of a lot of aspects of my life. And my relationship with desire, creation, calling things in, my relationship with like just enough money, just enough love, like really having such a palette for just enoughness, being like close enough in my career, doing things that I like, and like more and more doing things that I like, but it's still really not being it, and all the ways that I continuously settle for this experience. And it's so funny, it's just like being here is such potent ground to work with this, because I can see it so well. It's like my soul is stepping toward these things because it knows that these are the places where I have to see it, I have to experience it, and I have to be able to grow from it, alchemize it, and choose differently. And I have so many habitualized patterns wrapped up in this, and it feels like I'm back here because I got a taste for it last winter. I was here for 4 months and I got a taste for it, and things got shaken up in a way, and there was like a new little foundation that was put in place. There was a death and rebirth then, but it was really just like a small taste, a small realignment that really did change the trajectory of 2024 by being here, by seeing these wounds, seeing these patterns, being confronted in really deep ways by these two big parts of my beingness, the family and relationship parts. And yeah, and now I'm back, I think, because my soul really, really wants a deeper resolution of these two things. And some people, I think, can like see the pattern, do the thing, like make the changes, nip the habit in the butt before it like really manifests. But I have this beautiful energetic signature in my chart of the, what is it? It's in human design. I'm a 3-6. So I'm a martyr sage or martyr teacher. And the really fun part about being a martyr is that you have to go through the fire. There's no around the fire. There's no like through the back door, through the window. It is a fucking path of ignition, and it is a path of like walking on the coals again and again just to make sure they're still hot. Have to just touch the stove again, touch the stove again. And I think I'm here because there's going to be like that breakthrough point where I'm like, okay, I get it. The stove's hot. It's not going to change. My will can't change that. And I think that's also part of being on the surrender path of really understanding what you can change and what you can't change. Because we can't change everything. Our karma in this life gives us some parameters. What we can't change is other people. There can be something really profound and beautiful there. And you can never make them choose that. You can never make them choose you. And that's true for many things. And I just don't hear people talk about it enough. We're really in this world and this phase of creation that's really important, where we really do need to understand how powerful we are as creators, and that the external does reflect the internal. There is a relationship to all of this. So I'm climbing a mountain. You do have significant power in this world. This is a free will world. You have power. You have creative alchemy. There's so much to be transmuted and transformed. And your karma is going to also really influence your life. And we are just not born with the same karma. We're not. Each soul is on a different path and different trajectory. And I think that that's really, really frustrating right now, because more and more we're seeing these beautiful emblems of success that's measured through monetary success, like worldly success, family success. We're seeing like marriages, relationships, beauty, money, worldly possessions, travel, all of these amazing things that are a big part of the earth plane. And we all have our own version of that. But it's different. It is. And I think that it's really unsatisfactory to measure yourself against other people, because your soul's path is completely different. And this is coming from someone who has a soul's path that is, it's just not straight and narrow. I can desire things and work really hard toward them and do so much work and subconscious reprogramming and all of these things. And I shift and I change and I create reality. And my karma is going to also influence that and guide that and create a certain experience of life on this planet, in this body. And ultimately that's really beautiful and really special and incredible. But it's not always easy. It's not. It really isn't. And just acknowledging that I can't transmute every single thing. I can't turn every single thing into some outward version of gold. What I can do is turn it into my own version of gold. And I think that that is the key and the way. And this is what I teach in Inner Prism. Inner Prism is all about refining your own gold, refining your own prism, getting crystal clear on really who you are and why you're here. I have a cough, I'm hiking a mountain. Refining your own vision, refining your own version of gold and success and creation, and marrying alchemy with karma and understanding that there is a beautiful life for you and it's right in front of you, and your path is your life and your life is your path. Like, this is it. Any challenge that's coming up right now is there for you. Anything that is like blocking, you're like, I'm so hung up on this guy right now. And I know that it's not going to work out between us. I know that like he is never going to choose me. He's never going to want the version of life that I want. And it's part of my karma to meet him, because as I started to say at the beginning of this, like, he is an embodiment of the place that I'm at in my spiritual growth, of really seeing the patterns, a really heightened awareness, and the part of me that is still choosing the just enoughness, choosing the suffering over the freedom. And it's really vulnerable to say that, but it's the truth. And I'm saying it because I think it's really helpful. Because if you really get honest with yourself, there's probably some things that are happening that really are beyond your control, right? There's things that happen in our life that are beyond our control. And then there's things that happen to us that are within our control. And that's such a big part of what I'm talking about, is learning what's in our control and learning what's beyond our control. But even with things beyond our control, there's still a way to work with them. So me meeting this person is maybe beyond my control. Then me choosing how to relate to him, how I'm letting him into my world and field, and how I'm engaging with this, and why I'm again and again choosing this version of suffering because it's comfortable, right? Because it is what I have programmed into my being, mostly unconsciously, right? A lot of this is unconscious patterns that we are essentially sabotaging ourselves with, and they usually come from younger parts of us that learned to kind of manipulate love, essentially. If we're really thinking about love as this really powerful force that is beyond like romantic love. Love is this creative force in the universe. We all want to connect to that source, that creative power. And when we're young, we receive that love from our parents, or we don't. And we begin to do things and contort and move in certain ways in order to receive droplets of love, because we feel disconnected from source, from totality, from this stream of love that creates life. And when we're born into bodies, we have this illusion that comes over us of separateness. And on our path, we're navigating the separateness in all of these ways, and we come up with all of these wild coping mechanisms that essentially, on some level, we think are bringing us closer to love, and yet they often separate us more. And there are things that we learn when we're really little kids, and then sometimes they work just enough as little kids, and then they usually really don't work for us as adults. The ways that we contort ourselves to earn love, essentially. Earn love in the form of money, earn love in the form of romantic relationship, earn love in the form of success. I'm using love as a overarching word, but I really mean it as the abundance of existence. We develop these really unhealthy habits around creation and around love and around worth, and we say, okay, this is just enough because we're used to that experience of just enoughness based on our family of origin. Even if our parents meant well and wanted everything for us, they can't provide that. It's not possible. So we all have these little wounds and these little wounded selves. We just get really habituated in choosing that fear instead of the love, and it's a unconscious pattern most of the time. And it's a pattern that we're just familiar with. It keeps us safe, right? So I'm in this heightened state of this pattern and this experience because I'm coming to a pivotal choice point where I'm going to have the opportunity to quantum leap, which just means choosing something else. And just like changing timelines through a choice. But I'm keeping myself here on this treadmill of experience of just enoughness in a relational dynamic where someone is not choosing me and will never choose me. And also, that's also being reflected in my career and in my financial experience of just scraping by, like having a big expense come, having just enough money to cover it, but not really, really moving in a fully fluid, abundant way, the way that I envision and see for myself and know is possible. And the beautiful thing about this man and this relationship is that he's able to show me this really directly, because it's really, it's a spicier experience, because the way that I'm going to pay attention is when my heart is like broken and tender, and it's going to make me feel really alive. And the gift of that heartbreak and that aliveness is that it's going to make me see everything that I'm seeing right now and say, oh, wow, yeah, he's a representation of this all over my life right now. And all of the ways that I'm settling for something that isn't right for me, but because there's an addictive pattern there's like just enough in my experience with him that is thrilling and exciting, and he will acknowledge the love just enough to keep me like hooked, truly, to keep me there. And you know, his way of doing it is through transparency and being like, yeah, I'm not going to do this, right? So then it's leaving it up to me. So if I'm engaging, he gets to be like, well, I've told you since day one, this is how it is. So he feels, I think, free, because if I'm opting in, it's like not on him. And he's tried before to kind of redirect the relationship and not have this be part of the dynamic, and yet it keeps being alive, because there is something there, right? Because there always is. Of course there always is. And that can be real, and it can also be completely not viable. And I think it takes a lot of discipline and courage to break the habit, right? Because when we're at this precipice, especially, it feels like a death, because it is. Your ego has to die and detach from this made-up story of this experience that you're attached to, right? Our stories are so powerful. That's why I think talk therapy can be a little constrictive, because we're telling our story over and over again and cementing it. So to me, the less stories we can have, the better. The more open we can be, the more malleable and less attached to the experience and the story. But it feels like a death when you get to a choice point that is a quantum leap, because you have to let that version of yourself die. One of my favorite sayings is, your new life will cost you your old life. And we like to vision into the future of what we want, but most of the time we're extremely hesitant and unwilling to actually make the change in order to create the thing that we desire, because the addiction of what we're used to is so strong. It's so strong. It's such a big driving force. And it's totally okay to be in that cycle. But I think when we can really get real with ourselves and truly acknowledge that addictive pattern or behavior, it's just really freeing. And you move from being a victim to being a powerful creator, but you have complete responsibility, which sucks, because there's no one to blame except yourself. And when there's no one to blame except yourself, it's just you. And you're faced with the ways in which you're unwilling to change, the ways in which you are choosing suffering instead of freedom. And that's very confronting for most of us. And it should be, because it's growth and it's death. New life requires death, and we don't really tend to death well in any way in this culture, because usually with death there is a loss, there is a change, there is grief, and we're trained to live in a perpetual summer, and that doesn't include the grief of death, the grief of things falling apart, the grief of the old self, which is so much of it, is just the grief of the old self. Because your old self is not going to survive if you change all of the patterns and stories that create that self, that create that identity. And it sucks. really fucking sucks. Like, it's not fun. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, but I'm not necessarily having a fun time right now. I feel a lot of heartbreak, both for, like, the experience I'm having. Like, there actually is just heartbreak in that experience. And there's a lot of heartbreak and grief knowing that there's this part of me that is choosing something that isn't ultimately beneficial for me. That there is this part of me that is addicted to this way of being that doesn't serve my highest good, that doesn't serve my highest timeline. And we all have these things. They're different ways. They're different shapes. Maybe they really are addiction in the form of substances. But for most of us, it's just addiction in the way that we relate to the world through these old habits that we're unwilling to break or can't break. Sometimes we really can't break them on our own. It's very serious work. And that's why it's so beautiful to have so many teachers and modalities and coaches and people who work in this realm and in this space. I have a coach that I have worked with one-on-one for the past 2+ years on seeing these habits and breaking them. And this is a part of Inner Prism. Inner Prism is really about crafting and creating a vision for your life and getting really clear on what that is. But you're not going to be able to actualize that unless you're able to also break some chains, break some bonds, change the karma that you're able to change, and learn how to work with the karma that is here to stay. Because this is life. Like, this is why we're here. We're here on this trajectory in these human bodies, living this lifetime in this avatar as this version of self, as this tendril of the universe expressing itself through expansion. And it's real. It's really real. And we have to resource ourselves with people and tools and communities and spaces that are able to hold us through the death and rebirth cycle. And this is part of why I'm here. This is in all of my charts, in all of my different ways of looking at my spiritual blueprint. I have a really strong death and rebirth signature. And I have that in part so that I can help others who have death and rebirth signatures learn how to navigate the hell of death and rebirth, because it's not easy. It's just not. But it's worth it, because it's happening whether you're opting in or not, right? That's the thing about most karma. It's happening with or without your consent. It's happening with or without your, just opting in. So in my mind, it's always better to opt in and to really fortify yourself and really resource yourself and create the capacity that it really takes to transform something, to move from the past into the future to quote unquote quantum leap, because that quantum leap is so big and yet it's so small. That quantum leap is just choosing something different route. That quantum leap really just is a new choice point, but it can be the hugest decision, going from choosing something that's just enough to choosing the death of that. Because it's not, you don't get the life usually right away. You have to go through the death process. And as I was saying, we don't really have a culture built around any sort of death process. So when you walk away from something, especially something that you're used to, especially something that has good in it, because usually it does, usually there is love, usually there is chemistry, there's good things that are keeping you there. You have to say no to all of those good things in order to up level to the next set of good things that will be more aligned with your highest version of yourself. But it's really brave and really hard to actually make that change and actually say no to all of the good things that are happening, right? Usually it takes a big moment often it will take a rock bottom for something to change, for us to actually make these things and decide that we need to act in a different way. But you always have a choice. You always have a choice. You always get to opt in. You always get to opt out. You always get to change the trajectory of your life in this way. But it is so hard. It's so hard. And people like to talk about it as though it's really easy. And I would like to say that it's not, and that you're really amazing and brave for showing up and for being there and for doing all of the work, even if you do cycle back into old patterns, because that's part of it. That's part of being human. And the hope is that we're continuing to spiral upward, right? We're revisiting these old patterns, hopefully from a higher state of consciousness, hopefully from a place where we've learned a little, even if it's just a little. 1% better every day is 365% better after a year. That is huge, 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 huge. And so it's really about progress, not perfection. And it's about self-inquiry and honesty, right? And saying, wow, I am in an addictive pattern. I am in a way of being that is not serving my highest good, and yet I'm continuously choosing this. And ultimately, I am not a victim. I am a creator and taking on that deep responsibility and learning to navigate the death that is necessary in order to get to the next level and in order to eat the fruit and see the results that your soul is really craving to experience in this life.